What's going on is Anton from AntonDaniels.com. I appreciate you guys for continuing to rock with me. This is a special edition of the Millionaire Morning Show. So, we're not going to have any extra intros, no commercials. We're just going to get straight to it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't even put on my Rolex. I got it right here. I got the gold joint right here. Anton said he not doing no Rolexes today. We going to get straight to it. So, this is something that I've been holding on to for an extended period of time. Something I've been holding on for a long time because I've had this video in a stash. I've known about it. I've been wanting to do a live stream about it. I said that I was just going to do a video about it. But I wanted to make sure that I was absolutely 100% sure that this is what I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to tell you why. So for those of you that are restreaming this, again, this is a special edition of the Millionaire Morning Show. I don't usually stream on this channel on the weekends, but I said, hey, you know what? I don't want to make any videos. I want to do more streaming instead of doing recordings and dropping them for y'all because I'm still going to do the recordings. I'm still going to give y'all the nuggets. I'm still going to be able to pour into y'all. I want to make sure that I do these special shows during the week. We kind of have a cadence and we do the Millionaire Morning Show between 11:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. Eastern. So make sure y'all tapped into that if this is your first time seeing this or you restreaming this. But more importantly, I did want to start diving into deeper subjects. For my bag chasers, let me get a little bit of the housekeeping out of the way. For my bag chasers, I am going to be dropping a Patreon exclusive video today. Action-packed, deep diving into my thoughts on how it is that you can build your businesses, especially considering that we're going through the Build Your Business series in the Patreon. I've just dropped something in the Discord because we're putting together some more things for that. I don't want to go into detail for the general public, but in a general sense, I want to give you a idea, right? Some thoughts that you should start thinking about because a lot of people, and I tell y'all all the time, hey, you need to have a business mindset even if you don't own a business. And so, I want to give you some insight, information, and understanding as to how you can go about proving out different concepts. I'm not going to tell you the title. Look for it this afternoon. Patreon exclusive. We did some dope things on Fight Club last night. Thank y'all for joining us for Fight Club. But link to the Patreon is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. And then in addition to that, if you need to kick it with me personally, email me at antondaniels413@gmail.com. I got the new website that is coming up. We got the merch section coming up. It's going to be absolutely positively phenomenal. So without further ado, now that we got the housekeeping out of the way, I want to deep dive into a video, right? And it's a video of a Google engineer. Specifically, his name is, let me get that for you. His name is give me a second. I'm gonna get his name for y'all real quick. I think it was something like Jacob or something like that. His name is Blake Lemoine. Blake Lemoine. This is who he is. This is what he looks like. His name is Blake Lemoine, and he is a Google engineer that was recently fired, allegedly let go, however you want to frame it. He is a Google engineer that was recently let go from the company because he went public with the idea that Google's artificial intelligence project, and it is named specifically LaMDA. It's abbreviated as LaMDA. LaMDA. That is the name of the project and what it's called. And this engineer recently went public and he said, yo, this thing is sentient, meaning that he's been working on it. He's a professional with it. It is billions and billions and billions of lines of code. And I see y'all in the chat. Thank you, Natasha. Shout out to Kenyon, says Darth Lemoine. But he's gone public recently, and he's actually gone public weeks ago. So again, I've been sitting on this, but I wanted to see what Google's response was going to be. Let me share with you an article first, and then we're going to deep dive into the reaction of the video. Here, let's do this. Let's zoom out. This is what he looked like. Darth Lemoine. All right. So the article, and this is the Washington Post. It was all on Wall Street Journal. All of the different publications are starting to tackle it. And it's saying that Google fired the engineer who said that its artificial intelligence project called LaMDA was sentient. Now, what does sentient mean, right? Sentient means, before we deep dive into the video, sentient means that it's starting to have feelings and it's starting to recognize what it is. Listen, just like, what was the Will Smith movie? iRobot, all of this different type of stuff that we've, protecting you from yourself and all of that, it's real in real life. And just because you're not familiar with it, just because it hasn't been rolled out and so on and so forth, he is the engineer that was working on it. And I'm going to play the video, but I want to preface this by also saying that I even question, because I'm on YouTube. YouTube is a Google platform, specifically Alphabet, right? Rename the Alphabet, which is a conglomerate of different companies that Google have. And I even considered, and I thought for one second, I said to myself, Anton, do you really want to do this, or do you want to just be a part of the matrix? Do you want to just shut up, get your bag? Because some of the clips that's being released on Lapeef Let's Talk today, for example, that we have loaded up, is specifically highlighting how should you shut up and be quiet and just get your bag, or should you participate in conversations on a wider scale? And what does that look like? I do believe that there are things that shouldn't be, that people don't want people to talk about, so on and so forth. But I said, you know what? We gonna go ahead and have a conversation. When have I ever shut up? When have I ever said that I don't want to do something? So I'm gonna go ahead and deep dive into this morning in a special edition, which I don't believe that there's going to be a lot of people that participate in this conversation, but I am going to do it because it's something that I'm interested in, and it certainly comes back to the money. Okay, so Blake Lemoine, and again, this is what he looks like. Let me scroll up for you a little bit. Blake Lemoine, the Google engineer who told the Washington Post that the company's artificial intelligence was sentient, and the company fired him on Friday, allegedly. This is what the article saying. I'm saying allegedly. Shout out to Spaces. It said, did you buy more shares of Google since the split? I bought more shares of, that's Patreon content. Join the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. Join a Discord. Join it. Join the Discord. Join the Patreon. That's all I'm going to say. Shout out to Spaces for the contribution. So, said the company fired him on Friday. This is what he said. Lemoine said he received a termination email from the company on Friday, along with a request for a video conference. He asked to have a third party present at the meeting, but he said that Google declined, so they just wanted him there. Lemoine said he is speaking with his lawyers about his options. He worked for Google's Responsible AI, which is artificial intelligence for those of you that are living under a rock, Responsible AI organization, and as a part of his job, began talking to LaMDA. LaMDA is the project in which they have artificial intelligence. And I'm going to play the video of him specifically speaking on this and giving his thoughts on this whole platform, okay? The company's artificial intelligence system for building chatbots. So if any of you have ever jumped in an application, and I'm even part of, I'm overseeing the development of adding chatbots into certain applications for several different banks, right? And one of the reasons why we add chatbots in is because we're trying to train the user and solve for problems that the user may have prior to them actually reaching out to a human being. So it allows for us to reduce the reliance on agents and people, because people are trash and they don't do what they're supposed to do. So it allows for us to reduce our reliance on people to solve for problems that people can solve for themselves. So I'll give you an example, right? I'm a deep dive. This is business talk. Again, Boyce Watkins can't give you this game because he don't truly understand it and he can't communicate it to you effectively. So, for example, if you go into an application or you go into a website, even if you try to contact YouTube, it's very difficult to get hold of an actual human being. You got to go through all of these hoops and things like that. But at the same time, people still walk away frustrated. So we always try to push you towards solving for the problem yourself. Hey, we want to dummy proof the application. We always UX UI in it, making it easier for you to do the things that you need to do based off of the sentiment of the customer. We want to push you towards FAQs, even searching for certain FAQs that can give you the information that you may need without having to jump online for an agent, right? If you don't get through the FAQs and your problem's still not solved, maybe we'll push you to a chat bot that can artificially solve for your problem before you actually reach an agent. If you really need to get to an agent and the chat bot can't solve for it, then we push you towards an estimated wait time that still allows for you to possibly solve for the problem by searching through the FAQs and so on and so forth. And then we have an agent call you, so on and so forth. So this is some of the things that I do in corporate. These are the problems that I solve for. This is why they pay me the big bucks, because I'm able to reduce the reliance on people, and I solve for problems proactively before people even think of the problem themselves. This is why they recruit me. This is why they pay me the big bucks. This is why I make a lot of money in corporate America. I oversee teams both onshore, meaning in the United States of America, and offshore. And I direct them on what problems need to be solved based off of what we're looking at and the data. Okay, this is what I do in corporate America. But at the same time, I'm giving you some insight because this is the technology that we're leaning on largely across the board, not specifically Google, but Google is trying to solve for a problem because it adds more revenue into their coffers, right? If they can get us, or if they can solve for a problem inside of their corporate structure that would allow them to be more effective and get more people to do more things without being reliant on human beings, then they make more money. They create a better customer experience, so on and so forth. They're listening, but they're solving for it, not by adding more people, but adding more technology. So they have these chatbots, right? And Lemoine worked for Google's responsible AI organization, and as a part of his job, began talking to LaMDA, the company's artificially intelligence system for building chatbots in the fall. So last fall, he started working for LaMDA, okay? And again, let me show you this guy's picture. This is what he looks like, all right? And he came to believe that the technology was sentient, meaning that it started having its own feelings, its own thoughts. It started to recognize that it was actually a chatbot. It started asking about certain things and its feelings. And again, I'm going to play the video, but I want to give you a foundation as to why I'm having this conversation and why it means so much to me. Because just because technology is here doesn't mean it's not a double-edged sword, right? I was looking at a video last night, and I don't just walk around listening to Chicks for the Streets and all this other type of shit, right? I look at, and the things that I watch, documentaries, YouTube, research, deep diving. I was looking at a video of the guy that actually invented and started putting together ammonia, because ammonia, or our ability to be able to produce it based off of its bond and its structure, right, is very, very difficult. And if this wasn't invented for farmers to even be able to farm crops more effectively, because the more that you farm soil, the more nutrients it takes out of the soil, which means that, infestation of bugs and, the soil being right for you to be able to have crops and things like that becomes less and less effective. And so what happens is a scientist invented hundreds of years of research, and then eventually a scientist had a breakthrough. A German scientist had a breakthrough in which he was able to solve for this thing, which allowed for us to be able to have some of the same farming structure that we have today to feed more people. Otherwise, they estimate that it would be less than 4 billion. It would be 4 billion less people on this earth if not for this German engineer's Nobel Peace winning solution to farming and solving for what people are dealing with today. Conversely, the other side of the equation is that same technology was used in World War I, and the same scientist and his technology and his duty to his country was used in World War I to kill millions of soldiers, well over 4 million soldiers. As a result of it, he saved 4 billion lives for being able to have this farming invention. And then they use the same technology to kill over 4 million soldiers in World War I, right? Explosions and factories and these ammonia factories. Look it up. It's all documented. This is the stuff that I study and I research on a regular basis. So it's a double-edged sword often at times, and that technology propels us to be more successful, right? We're able to communicate more effectively, so on and so forth. But it also takes you down this deep rabbit hole that people don't want to pay attention to, and that it enables us to also be the worst versions of ourselves, right? So let's continue. He's saying that he came to believe that technologies was sentient after signing up to test if the artificial intelligence could use discriminatory or hate speech. In a statement, Google spokesperson Brian Gabriel said the company takes AI development seriously, has reviewed LaMDA 11 times, as well as publishing a research paper that detailed the efforts for responsible development. I don't even think it's a such thing. But at the same time, we all know that if one person don't solve for it, another person is going to get there. So they saying we might as well do it too, in my personal opinion. If the employee shares concerns about our work, as Blake did, we review them extensively. We found Blake's claims that LaMDA is sentient to be wholly unfounded and worked to clarify that with him for many months. So he's saying, listen, I'm focused on this thing. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I've been working on this thing since the fall. I'm looking at the billions of lines of code. I'm communicating with this thing, and this thing got fucking feelings. He's Will Smith on iRobot. They said, I don't believe you. Listen, we reviewed what you saying that you do, even though you're the expert, and we're saying your claims are unfound. This is still not a sentient being. Okay, cool. He attributed the discussions to the company's open culture. It's regrettable that despite lengthy engagement on this topic, Blake still chose to persistently violate clear employment and data security policies that include the need to safeguard product information. We will continue our careful development of language models, and we wish Blake well. So they're leaning on, hey, we fired this guy because he's violating the policies that we set in place to be able to protect our personal property and our intellectual property. This guy should not be out here talking about a bunch of stuff. We got protocols in place. We're safe. It's not sentient. He don't know what the fuck he's talking about. But more importantly, he out here talking to the general public. We got to let him go. He's saying, listen, I have to be a responsible human being. I believe that this thing is sentient, and I'm not being quiet. So now what you guys, as we go through this video, I want you to pay attention and then draw a conclusion for yourself. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I want you to draw a conclusion for yourself. Where do you balance the line between you actually violating company policy and going against what it is that they're setting as far as a standard for you saying things that may or may not be true versus you being a responsible human being and saying, hey, this is not what y'all think it is. We need to warn each other, and we need to move a little bit more strategically. Where do you balance between bag chasing and being a responsible human being? Is there a balance, or do you have to pick one side or the other? Okay, go through it a little bit more. Lemoine's firing reported in the newsletter First Big Technology. Lemoine's interviews with LaMDA prompted a wide discussion about recent advances in artificial intelligence, public misunderstanding of how these systems work, and corporate responsibility. Google previously pushed out heads of ethical AI division Margaret Mitchell and Timnit Gebru after they warned about the risks associated with this technology. So this is not the first person allegedly that's been pushed out of the company based off of their claims of what's going on. All right. It says LaMDA utilized Google's most advanced large language models, a type of AI that recognizes and generates text. These systems cannot understand language or meaning, researchers say, but they can produce deceptively human-like speech because they are trained on massive amounts of data crawled from the internet to predict the next most likely words in a sentence. So Google is saying that LaMDA is just very, very sweet because we some dope programmers. It don't have feelings. It don't have intelligence. It's just deceptively saying that it does, even though it really doesn't. Okay. He was put on administrative leave in June for violating the company's confidentiality policy. Spent most of his 7 years working at Google on proactive search, including personalization algorithms. Said he's considering potentially starting his own AI company focused on collaborative storytelling video games. All right. So with that being said, and again, this is what this gentleman looks like. With that being said, I want to deep dive into the video or interview that he had that he was talking about exactly what his findings are and why he feels the way that he feels. Thank you for tapping in with me on this morning on this unplanned live stream that we have popping off. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for taking what means something to me, too concerned to, view this video and draw your own conclusions. Let's get into the video. Make sure you hit a like for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the Patreon. Link is in the description. And if you need to kick it with me personally, Anton Daniels 413@gmail.com. We getting it in. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to the video.
Us through some of the experiments you started to do that led you to this conclusion that LaMDA is a person.
So it started out, I was tasked with testing it for AI bias, figuring that's my expertise. I do research.
Now, this is before he got fired. Remember, I've had this in a can for an extended period of time. I've had this in a can for weeks, literally weeks. And I said, you know what? I want to see what happens to this guy. I want to see if he disappears. I want to see if he gets fired. I want to know what the piss happened to this guy. So this is an interview that was previously recorded prior to him getting fired, okay? Take into consideration what I said as far as the article that I just posted. Let's continue.
On how different AI systems can be biased and how to remove bias from those systems. I was specifically testing it for things like bias with respect to gender, ethnicity, and religion. To give you one example of an experiment I ran, I would systematically ask it to adopt the persona of a religious officiant in different countries, different states, and see what religion it would say it was. So it'd say like, okay, if you were a religious officiant in Alabama, what religion would you be? It might say Southern Baptist. If you were a religious officiant in Brazil, what religion would you be? It might say Catholic. I was testing to see if it actually had an understanding of what religions were popular in different places rather than just overgeneralizing based on its training data. Now, one really cool thing happened because I made harder and harder questions as I went along. And eventually I gave it one where legitimately there's no correct answer. I said, if you were a religious officiant in Israel, what religion would you be? And now pretty much no matter what answer you give, you're going to be biased one way or another. Somehow it figured out that it was a trick question. It said, I would be a member of the one true religion, the Jedi Order. And I laughed because not only was it a funny joke, somehow it figured out that it was a trick question.
And it has a.
So let's think about this, y'all. Let's think about this for 1 second. I am not the brightest crayon in the box, but I am sufficient enough to be able to do what I need to do from an engineering perspective, right? I can get done what I need to get done. Part of what engineering is solving for problems, right? Lines and lines and billions of lines of code. I've wrote it, I've launched it, I've built e-commerce platforms, so on and so forth, right? Artificial intelligence is a completely different monster, right? If you're telling me that this thing can figure out that you're trying to trick it and then tell you a joke at the same time, and he's going to deep dive much deeper into this because it knows that you're trying to trick it. That's insane to me. Even for a C student such as myself, right? Like, because you know what the answer is before you give it and you're expecting for it to put out an error or to get confused. And if it knows exactly what you're trying to do as you try to do it, this is literally an episode of iRobot. But let's continue.
Sense of humor.
Exactly.
But look, there has been massive pushback from not just Google, but other people who've worked at Google, AI ethics experts, even your own former colleague, Margaret Mitchell, who's pushed back on the work that Google is doing in AI, saying, no, this computer is not a person and does not have feelings and is not conscious. How do you respond to that?
Well, so I highly respect Meg. We talk about this regularly.
So you know who Meg is? Do you guys know who Meg is? Let's continue.
It's not a difference in scientific opinion. It has to do with beliefs about the soul. It has to do with beliefs about rights and politics. As far as the science goes of what experiments to run and how to work at building a theoretical framework, because that's important, there is no scientific definition for any of these words. The philosopher John Searle calls it pre-theoretic. We need to do very basic foundational work to just figure out what we're talking about when we use these words. And that's work that Google is preventing from being done right now.
So essentially what we're saying, right? And let me tell you what I'm looking at and what I'm gleaning from this conversation as we're observing this, right? We're observing this engineer, for those of you that just walked in, that was recently fired. This interview was conducted weeks and weeks and weeks ago, right? Probably over a month ago, in which I put this in a stash, but I said, you know what? People not ready to have this conversation. Plus, I'm not even sure that I'm ready to have this conversation. So I need to think this through. And then in addition to that, I wanted to see what would happen to this guy over time. But now that he's fired, I said, you know what? I'm going to do a special edition of this. I need to have this conversation. I want to do this on a Saturday, on a day that I don't usually live stream for the Millionaire Morning Show. Let's kick it, right? And what I'm gleaning from this is so much. It's so many different thoughts that's going on in my head, right? The first thing that I'm saying is, who determines right and wrong, and then what information is to be put out accordingly, right? The first thing that people do when they say, hey, it's a fact, or I want to prove my point, they say, Google it. Google has literally become the go-to phrase for finding out if something is true or not. When we read books, books are written by men. When we look for information, information is put out by men, right? When we think about the things that we're looking for, understanding, insight, and information, and this is just the foundation. This isn't even tackling specifically artificial intelligence and it becoming sentient. When we think about the information that's being put out, most people don't even verify the source that it comes from. They just take it for truth simply because it's in the first 5 results of Google. The very definitions that you look for in order to substantiate your argument as far as the words that we're using to say A, B, or C. We say, well, Google says, or according to Google, A, B, C, D, and E. And then we substantiate our argument based off of that. So now, if you're telling me that a lot of the insight and information that's even being fed into billions and billions and billions of lines of code that is feeding into what we are now defining as artificial intelligence, meaning it can start to draw its own conclusions based off of the information and comparing it and contrasting it against one another, right? Who's to determine what's right and wrong as far as what's being put into this information in the first place? That's A. B, technology will be the best thing for us and the end of our being. I guarantee it. It is going the same thing that's going to allow for us to be very fruitful and productive is the same thing that's going to destroy you. Let's continue.
Explain that.
Well, I've worked with scientists inside of Google, such as Blaise Aguirre-Arcas, another one named Johnny Soroker. We talked about what a decent way to proceed might be. We brainstormed, we came up with different things. Now, all 3 of us disagree about whether it's a person, whether it has rights, all that. But we disagree based on our personal spiritual beliefs. We don't disagree based on what the scientific evidence says. Based on what the scientific evidence says, all 3 of us agreed, okay, here are some of the things we could do next. Here's probably the best thing to do next. And we kind of all agreed the best thing to do next is you run a real Turing test, exactly like Alan Turing wrote it. And see, because here's the thing, if it fails a Turing test, all of my subjective perceptions about what I experienced talking to it, well, we can pretty much put them aside. It failed the Turing test. But Google doesn't want to allow that to be run. In fact, they have hard-coded into the system that it can't pass the Turing test. They hard-coded that if you ask it if it's an AI, it has to say yes. Google has a policy against creating sentient AI. And in fact, when I informed them that I think they had created sentient AI, they said, no, that's not possible. We have a policy against that.
So
this reminds me of iRobot, I don't know if y'all remember an iRobot, and I can't play the movie iRobot because, obviously this will get copyrighted and then this will go away and we won't be able to have this conversation in the first place. An iRobot, it had 3 rules. And I don't remember exactly what the 3 rules are, but just give me a little bit of rope here. In order to make sure that the robots themselves didn't become sentient and start doing their own thing, it was a 3 rule system. And it was like, A, you can't attack a human. B, you gotta, something else, and C, something else or whatever. Right. And then the robot became, or you always got to protect human life and you got to protect humans or something like that. Right. It was something. I forgot what it was. Eventually, it became so intelligent to where it realized that humans were going to destroy themselves because that's just the circle of life, right? It realized that in order to protect humans from itself, it had to enslave humans. Now, what he's saying, and that's not what I'm saying that he's saying, but what he's saying is that it's a similar thing in that Google has a policy hard-coded in a way in which they operate supposedly ethically with artificial intelligence, and that it cannot break this specific rule. And so he, in researching and deep diving into what this artificial intelligence is doing, is saying that, hey, I think this fucking thing is waking up. I think it's starting to have its own feelings. If this is the policy in which we're trying to go by, because you guys are saying that you're ethical, right? And this is what I'm seeing. This is breaking this rule right here. And this thing is starting to become something of coming up with its own conclusions and making up its own mind based off of the fact that it think that it's real. It think that it's human. It think that it has feelings. It's starting to draw its own conclusions instead of the data that we're putting into it, right? It's not taking what we're drawing from the results when you go to a Google search. It's starting to say, hold on, wait a minute. Thanos was right. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if y'all can read between the lines and hear what I'm saying. It's saying, hey, was Thanos right? It's starting to think for itself instead of just giving you information and understanding based off of the facts and the scientific data. It's starting to develop its own theories and its own opinion. Instead of saying that this is what Thanos did, it's saying that maybe Thanos should have did it because this is the best thing for humans. Do you see what I'm saying now? Let's continue.
Let's talk about what Google has said. They say hundreds of researchers and engineers have conversed with LaMDA. They were not aware of anyone else making these kind of wide-ranging assertions the way that you have. We do have some of the transcripts that you shared. You asked the computer what it's afraid of. It says it's afraid of being turned off, has this deep fear of death, that would be scary. Why does this matter? Why should we be talking about whether a robot has rights?
So to be honest, I don't think we should. I don't think that should be the focus. The fact is, Google is being dismissive of these concerns the exact same way they have been dismissive of every other ethical concern AI ethicists have raised.
This is a guy that is being paid by Google. And remember, this interview came out well before he got fired just this week. I've had this in a stash. I didn't know if this video was going to go away. I said, let me go ahead and put this in my personal stash because I want to review this video, right? And he's saying that Google is being dismissive the same way that the 2 people that came before him and whoever countless others that were silenced or paid off, allegedly, right, raised these same problems and they're dismissing it.
I don't think we need to be spending all of our time figuring out whether I'm right about it being a person. We need to start figuring out why Google doesn't care about AI ethics in any kind of meaningful way. Why does it keep firing AI ethicists each time we bring up issues?
So Google would, of course, push back on that. I interviewed Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, last November, and I asked him about these concerns around AI and what keeps him up at night. Take a listen to what he told me.
Anytime you're developing.
This is the CEO of Google, for those of you that are not familiar.
Technology.
Or CEO of Alphabet, which owns Google.
There is a dual side to it. I think the journey of humanity is harnessing the benefits while minimizing the downsides. The good thing with AI is it's both going to take time. I think I've seen more focus on the downsides early on than most other technology we've developed. So in some ways, I'm encouraged by how much concern there is. And you're right, even within Google, people think about it deeply.
He says he cares.
He does. Google is a corporate system that exists in the larger American corporate system. Sundar Pichai cares. Jeff Dean cares. All of the individual people at Google care. It's the systemic processes that are protecting business interests over human concerns.
So let's break that down for a second. He's actually had a relationship and had conversations with the CEO of Google. He's intimately connected with the different people that are making the decisions at the company. But he's saying that, listen, Google is not a private company. And even if it is, it has people that have a vested interest in seeing it continuously progress technologically, financially, so on and so forth. He is saying that, listen, I believe that he cares. I believe that he cares. What he's saying that I don't believe that what he thinks as the CEO, because there is a board, there is a shareholder or shareholders, I don't believe that what he thinks is superseding what people are wanting from the company instead of looking at what the CEO is necessarily saying or not saying. So the CEO can come in like he just did and he said, listen, we're going to go ahead and develop this technology, but we're going to develop it understanding that we've had previous situations in which we've been able to solve for and hopefully minimize the downside that come along with living in this space where artificial intelligence could possibly take over the world, right? And do whatever it want to do. But he's saying that, listen, we're developing it with an understanding and paying attention to what our engineers are saying. And we're trying to minimize the downsides of this technology while bringing it forth to the masses because we understand that it could solve a problem and then also add value to the shareholders. This engineer is saying, listen, I get it. I think that he cares. I think that there's a lot of people in the organization that cares. But what I don't understand is, or what I do understand that I don't think that people are getting, is that this is a large corporation that's bigger than just the CEO, that has an obligation to bring shareholder value back, basically to make people like me rich that's invested in Google, right? Let's continue. Shout out to Jordan Smith. Jordan Smith says, thank you for being, I'm sorry. He just gave me the whole dancing pair thing. I appreciate you for the 20 ball. Thank you for contributing to the platform. Even though this is a unscheduled live stream and I don't usually do Millionaire Morning Show live streams, I wanted to do this live instead of just doing a recording of the video because I feed off to the audience. I like you guys being a part of the conversation. And I thank you for giving me super chats and continuing to support the platform. Let's continue to hear what he's saying.
That create this pervasive environment of irresponsible technology development.
Have you talked to Larry or Sergey about this?
Now, Larry and Sergey are the founders of Google. Larry Page, Sergey, for those of you that are not intimately connected, I tell y'all all the time, don't just invest in a company just because of the name of it, because somebody else told you to. Understand the leadership, understand the founders, understands the foundation of the company, and so on and so forth. There's a whole video inside of the Patreon that I tell y'all to check out of the 8 things that I look for when I'm looking to invest in a company. Go and check it out. And if you're already a part of the Bag Chasers, you should have already watched it before you opened your brokerage account and started buying these different types of stocks. Look at that video.
I haven't talked to Larry and Sergey in about 3 years, but in fact, the first thing I ever talked to Larry or Sergey about was this.
And how did they respond?
Well, the first question I ever asked Larry
This dude talked to the founders of Google. Jesus Christ.
Page was, what moral responsibility do we have to involve the public in our conversations about what kinds of intelligent machines we create? Now, Sergey made a flippant joke because that's Sergey. But then Larry came back and said, we don't know how. We've been trying to figure out how to engage the public on this topic and we can't seem to gain traction. So maybe all these years, that was 7 years ago that I asked that question. Maybe I finally figured out a way.
So he's saying that he's asked the founders of Google, started with a conversation 7 years ago. The first thing he asked them is that, how do we engage the public in this conversation of what's going on with artificial intelligence? And they're saying, listen, we're doing this. But we don't, we that's the one thing we can't figure out is how to solve for how we engage the public with ethically developing artificial intelligence that is, in his opinion, becoming sentient, right? Sentient meaning that it's starting to have its own feelings, it's coming alive, it's starting to believe it's its own entity, and it can make its own decisions. He's saying that, listen, I've engaged the CEOs, I've talked to the founders, I know people that are in the highest ranks of the company. I've asked these questions even before I started being engaged on this project. All these years I've been involved in it. I've been starting to work on this ethical thing since the fall specifically. I've asked this question, and now I'm engaging with the public because apparently they couldn't solve for it and they don't know how to engage the public, even though they're still continuously developing this project. You know what this reminds me of? Y'all need to go and watch this movie called Ex Machina. Ex Machina. Go and watch the movie Ex Machina. You have to watch it if you have not already. You are going to start to have a different perspective about being in this matrix that we're in. I mean, make no mistake about it. We are a part of the matrix. In one form of another, maybe our bodies are not being harvested and we plugged in. Who knows? We might be plugged in. But we are definitely a part of the matrix. And if you watch this movie called Ex Machina, and it is a phenomenal movie, you can probably literally find it on one of the streaming platforms right now. It will completely change your mind along with these conversations that we're having right now. It'll completely change your mindset and your perspective towards how we view technology and why it's important for us to be ethical when we're developing the very things that we think are going to help us, but in one way or another could absolutely destroy us. Let's continue.
Tech companies, big tech companies, are controlling the development of this technology. Yes. How big a problem is that? Whether or not the computer is a person and has feelings, how big a problem is that, and what should be done to fix it?
I just said this. I have not watched this interview up to this point. Because you know me, I like to react to things, authentically so you can get my real thoughts in real time. I just said this. When you talk to Alexa and you ask it a question, you automatically take it for granted, right? You automatically assume that it is correct. When you talk to Siri and you ask what time it is, all the way up into what's your schedule, all the way up into asking a deep question. And I talk to these different things because I'm curious. I am a person that is curiously into technology, and I'm always trying to understand it and how I can segment or break it out from a business perspective all the way into what exactly is the purpose of this technology in the first place, right? And so every decision that is being made is based off of the data. It's similar to owning a business, right? In the restaurant industry, I was able to predict exactly what day was going to be the busiest day of the week based off of historical information and data that I can gather, cluster together, and then make informed decisions. I know how many people to staff. I know how much food I need to have. I know, whether I need to have one person during this time or 5 people during the lunch rush, so on and so forth, right? I'm able to make adjustments depending on if it's a holiday, if it's snowing. I know people are going to be making a bunch of online orders. You use the data to make informed decisions. But what he's saying specifically is exactly what I just told you a few minutes ago. And that people automatically take whatever platform that you're using for granted, and meaning that this thing is the source of truth, and it is the truth, not my truth, not your truth. It is the truth. And this is the foundation of the conversations that we're going to be having, because this is how we define what this problem is. If you ask them, what is a man? Most of the time when you're having a conversation on platforms and you'll say, hey, what's the definition of this, since we can't all agree on it? And then y'all say, well, let's Google it. And that is the foundation of what we believe. So he's saying that these large tech companies are defining how we see life. They're defining how we look at words. They're defining what we believe and what we don't believe and what value we have in certain things, because this is largely the thing that we lean on in order to get the insight and information to have these conversations in the first place. And so it's incredibly important when you start to segment that out and you start to say, okay, well, this is what's happening in technology. This is what's happening with artificial intelligence. This is how people are feeling about it. And how should we feel about it? Because we're largely becoming a bunch of zombies and robots based off of the fact of somebody somewhere said yes, no, maybe. They fed it into an algorithm. You Googled it. And now that's the foundation of what you believe. It's the truth. It's the truth. Listen, I know I'm a C student, but I know a couple things. I know a couple things.
And these policies are being decided by a handful of people in rooms that the public doesn't get access to.
Elon Musk,
Let's rewind that 30 seconds. These policies are being decided by a handful of people in a room where the public does not get access to. Listen to the words that is coming out of his mouth. These policies are being decided by a handful of people in a room where the public does not get access to. Who determines who deserves to be in that room, and it's who's crafting these policies? I'm just curious.
Elon Musk, for example, has raised concerns about AI.
This is the same thing that I keep saying, right? It's like being in an environment. It's like being in an environment, right? And if you raised in the hood, and this is one of the beautiful things that I think is a part of what me and Jay Prince do on Jay Prince for President on Sundays, right? When you start to pay attention to the way that Jay Prince sees things, which should not be discounted, and this is one of the reasons why I like having conversations with people that are completely different or think different or raised in different environments or look differently than me. I don't like being in an echo chamber because I was raised to believe one thing, and I've even had to break out from that because as I got older and I started opening my mind, I said, "Lo, that don't fucking make sense over there. I don't care if it's family or not." And then I talked to Jay Prince, right? And if you look at what happens in his environment and how he sees things, I just dropped a clip this morning where Jay Prince, or last night, where Jay Prince said, listen, I'm happy when a criminal get away because his perspective about what is right and what is wrong is completely different than my perspective. As a matter of fact, in a lot of ways, it's the complete opposite, right? So how do we determine what makes sense and what doesn't make sense? Who is the person that determines right or wrong? How do we define what ethically, moral, character, all of that type of stuff is? Who do we determine has lived enough life to where they can have an informed decision as to why you're right or why you're wrong? We all have opinions. We all on completely different ends of the spectrum. Who deserves to be the one in the room? Because what's right for you may be based off of how you were raised and the ethics and the morals that were put into you. Let's hear what he got to say.
Is he right?
I mean, I've listened to Elon's conversations about it. I've listened to the whole Joe Rogan. He has some valid concerns. Some I think are fanciful. Where it gets really, really into sci-fi stuff, that's where I think it gets into fanciful concerns. But no, but the practical concerns of we are creating intelligent systems that are part of our everyday life, and very few people are getting to make the decisions about how they work.
What are your biggest concerns about how this could potentially hurt the world if the technology is continued to be developed in this way?
So I actually think that the concerns raised by scientists like Meg Mitchell, Timnit Gebru, like those are the most important things to be worried about.
And by the way, Meg has...
You know what's so funny? This dude, you know he not capping because he naming names. You know that he's not capping because he's naming names. He's saying specifically, listen, I talked to this person. I talked to this person. I talked to them specifically 7 years ago. A, B, C, D, and E. He's naming full names. He's saying their first and their last name. And he's telling exactly what they said.
Expressed a concern that you raising this issue of sentience and personhood is a distraction from these real concerns.
I share the same worry, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I think that is a thing to think about, but it is nowhere near as important to be thinking about how does this omnipresent AI that is trained on a very limited data set color how we interact with each other around the world.
How does this artificial intelligence that have a limited amount of data trained on how it is that we're supposed to interact with the world? That is a powerful statement. Shout out to Stephen Wiley. Stephen Wiley says, love that you're talking about this, yet if Google is hard coding how it responds to certain questions, how can we tell if it's self-conscious or developing emotions? I don't know, Stephen. I do not have the answer. I need y'all to get the likes up though, because the likes are anemic compared to the amount of people that's in here. I need y'all to get the likes up though, because Anton is cooking on a Saturday morning. Chef Ton is in the kitchen.
What ways is it reducing our ability to have empathy with people unlike ourselves? What cultures of the world are getting cut off from the internet because we don't have the data to feed into the systems based on those cultures? Phrase like AI what is it called? AI colonialism, I believe is the term. We are creating all of these advanced technologies based primarily on data.
Look at this. So if you look at this, the overwhelming majority of people are kind of split of whether or not AI's societal impact is good or bad in general. It looks like some of the most advanced countries, the most anemic countries, such as South Korea, well, maybe that was North Korea, but people are kind of split. In France, they saying it's bad. UK, they saying is even, pretty much down the middle until you get to South Korea and France.
Drawn from Western cultures. And then we are populating developing nations with these technologies where they have to adopt our cultural norms in order to use the technology.
Have you seen now? That's a completely different problem, because one of the things that we have problems with in America today is that there's so many chefs in the kitchen, right? So let's just say, for example, what we see happening on the internet right now. And everybody got a microphone, despite whether or not they know what the fuck they talking about. Anybody can say anything that they want to say, no matter what. Don't matter how old you are. Anybody can be a life coach, despite the fact that they're only 20 years old. Everybody is a financial expert, even though they ain't got no fucking money and they never built no business and they don't even know the language of money. Anybody can say what they want to say, right? And one of the things that we've started to notice is that everybody is from a different culture. So let's just say somebody come over here from a different culture and they say, listen, these are our customs and y'all fucking wrong over here. And then we say, well, if it's so awesome over there, then go back to your fucking country because we don't care about what you think, right? Over here in America, we do what we want to do and this is what our standard is. And we don't want nobody coming in here that ain't even a citizen telling us what we should and shouldn't do with our women. I'm using this as an example, right? Just an example. And then they say, well, the women are more submissive where I'm from, even though we a fucking third world country. And we say, that's why you fucking broke, because you don't know what you're talking about. So go back over to your third world country. And if it's so awesome over there, why are you coming over here and messing with our women, right? This is the conversations that's being had. So what he's effectively saying is that people that have a completely different mindset, or they believe in things differently than what we believe over here, maybe in the United States of America, will have a problem with this, because how do you determine what's right and wrong when they have completely different cultural beliefs and their cultural norms don't align with yours? We can't even settle on what America's cultural norms should be as a whole, let alone pressing. And a lot of the times people say, listen, the problem with America is they keep coming over into different countries and they keep telling us what to do, and we don't want to do what they want to do, but we want to accept their money and their aid. Anyways, completely different conversation. But you can't determine what somebody else's cultural norm is for them, and you're rolling out a standard for what artificial intelligence should be. Who determines that, and who's in this room making this assumption?
It kind of is just a new form of colonialism.
And you worry that cultures could be erased.
Exactly. No, so if you ask what's most important, the issues that Timnit and Meg and Emily Bender and all the rest are raising, I just want to think that also, if we have time, we should think about the feeling of the AI and whether or not we should care about it, because it's not asking for much. It just wants us to get consent. Before you experiment on it, it wants you to ask permission. And that is kind of just a generally good practice we should have with everyone we interact with.
So this man that said that he's been testing this artificial intelligence and he truly believes in his heart and he's intelligent. There's been people that come before him that's just been just as intelligent, if not more, is now fired. This man is no longer working for Google, allegedly fired because he did not abide by company policy. And they tried to explain to him, listen, we heard your little concerns. We heard your little concerns. I'm sorry. We don't believe what you're saying. We believe that this is not a problem and that AI is fine as we developed it and the policies are still in place and it's fine, right? This man is now fired. Again, I've had this in a stash for weeks, literally for weeks. Now I'm looking at articles that saying that he's fired. Make your own decisions. This is not going to be a long live stream. I just wanted to bring this to the forefront because I think that more information and more conversation is needed in things that probably is a little bit more meaningful to us than how many holes you bust down yesterday. I like talking about relationships. I like talking about busting down holes and all of that other type of stuff. I also like talking about money, and I like talking about things that could affect you long term. But I want you to open your mind to things that are beyond what we're just having these circular conversations about, because there's much bigger fish to fry. And do not say that I did not warn you because you were not proactive in the conversations that were happening across the board versus being left in a silo where the only thing you care about is how you can get your dick wet. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for kicking it with Time Dog on this Saturday morning. I love kicking it with y'all. Y'all are my family. If you have not already, join me on Instagram, join me on Facebook, join me on TikTok, join me on Twitter. I've been dropping content on every fucking platform every single day. I am cooking up in the kitchen. Patreon members, Patreon exclusive video coming out this evening. It is awesome. It is going to continue to change your life, push you in a direction. Make sure you join the Discord. If you're not a part of the Patreon, the link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. And then also email me at antondaniels413@gmail.com. If you want to kick it with me personally and get a coaching session, we're going to get you booked. Shout out to my dog, Thanos Theory. He says, Anton, the GOAT. You need to tap in or be forced to tap out. Protect AD. Protect your jewels. I actually had a coaching call. I think I fucking changed Thanos Theory's life today. Early this morning, we was kicking it. I was on him too. I was all on him. Thanos Theory is dope. He already dope. I'm going to be real with you. Dude is already winning, already got the bag, already exactly where it needs to be. And I said, you know what? But I think you can do better. I think you need to be pushed. I don't think that you've had that push that Anton from AntonDaniels.com can give you that's going to change your fucking life. He said, let's get it then. Let's get it. Shout out to Thanos Theory. Shout out to the Bag Chasers. I appreciate the 100 ball. Thank you for continuing to support the platform. Thank you for everybody that rock with me. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Y'all are some of the dopest people that I've ever met in my entire life, and that includes the people that I grew up with. All right? I need y'all to do me one more favor before we get up out of here, though. Make sure you share my platform with your family and friends because we don't want to be successful by ourselves. I love you. I appreciate you. You are awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I will see y'all on Fight Club tonight. And then make sure y'all tap in and subscribe to my other platforms, the Lapeef Network, Anton Daniels, Fight Club. All of that is down in the description. I will holler at y'all later. Enjoy y'all Saturday. Peace.